I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I'm actually so excited. You read that title correctly. I am coming back with Pan Those Eyeshadows Project Pan Remix edition because I've definitely switched things up. If you're not new here, I participated in Pan Those Eyeshadows for many years. However, being light-handed with my makeup and not someone that likes having like 6 palettes open to use one shade in each, it just wasn't really working for me anymore. And yet, Pan Those Eyeshadows continues to be one of my very favorite project pans to watch others do, and for months now I've had the itch of wanting to participate once again. I've also noticed outside of this project, I very rarely hit pan on eyeshadow, and I think eyeshadow pans are so satisfying, and I definitely want more showing in my collection. So far in 2024, I've only hit pan on 4 eyeshadows, which is crazy for me and crazy for being a project panner in my opinion, and I gotta get back to hitting some pans. I'm first going to give you a brief rundown on how I have put together my project pan, and I'm also giving myself some grace, some flexibility. If I want to change things up as we go along, I'm totally free to do so. I'm then going to chat about some stats related to panning eyeshadow in my collection. Then we will get rolling in some shades. So to start, I'm going to be working on 4 eyeshadows in this project pan. The goal will, of course, mostly be to try and hit pan on the eyeshadow, hence the whole purpose of this project. However, in my experience, there are some palettes or some shadows that I'm just really not getting anywhere with, and in those instances I am going to have a 24 use goal before I'm allowed to roll it out and kind of give up on that shade, if you will. 24 for the year 2024, and I'm planning on bumping that up to 25 once we roll into the new year. 2 of the 4 shades I will be working on will be randomly generated from my entire eyeshadow collection, which is how many people do this project, and I love randomization. I think it's so fun and exciting, so I definitely wanted to keep that aspect of this project in. It takes some of the choice away, which for someone like me with major decision fatigue over everything in my life is a really great thing. For others, they want more control over their eyeshadows, and that is perfectly understandable. A remix rule with those 2 eyeshadows is I'm going to randomly generate the eyeshadow, as I said. For example, let's say I got my ColourPop Dream Street palette, a shade in here. Now, let's say I got a shade that I'm not really loving, or it's not as versatile as I was hoping. I still am not reaching for it. I can hit pan on a different eyeshadow within this palette to roll it out. I also am someone who likes to use more than one shade in a palette when I'm reaching for it, so maybe just organically I will hit pan on a different shade, just kind of accidentally, and at that point I can roll it out as well. Even if it's not the exact specific shade I randomly generated, but it still needs to be within the palette. The other 2 of my 4 eyeshadows I will be generating from Makeup by Laney's list of 100 prompts. She turned her Pan Those Eyeshadows project into a prompt-based project, which is just so fun and again brings back a bit of that control. The prompts are an indie eyeshadow, an eyeshadow that is your favorite color, a black eyeshadow, an eyeshadow that starts with the letter K, etc. There are 100 prompts that Laney has come up with. I will have her linked down below, of course. Now, the remix rule for this part is I have selected 8, that is 6, Emily, 8 palettes that are kind of my focus palettes. I chose 8 of them for different reasons. I can share them with you in a moment. The prompt needs to work with one of my 8 palettes. These are palettes that I want pan showing in really badly compared to the rest of my collection. They're very old, or I think they would be easier to hit pan on, and if I cannot make a prompt from Laney's list work with these 8 palettes, I will be re-rolling, but keeping the prompt in because, for example, one of these, I just have one more eyeshadow to hit pan on, and then there will be pan in all of the eyeshadows, and at that point I will have to roll that palette out and roll something else in. Perhaps I will decide it's time to retire one of these really old palettes. I'm ready to declutter it. There's a variety of reasons why these 8 palettes will be slowly cycled through as we move through Laney's prompts. So even if it doesn't work with these first 8, as I swap them out occasionally, I might be able to make that prompt work, so I won't be just deleting it from the spreadsheet. Before getting into stats, I'm just going to quickly show you my 8 focus palettes in no particular order. I actually have them in an order of priority for me, but I'm not going to share that with you right now. I have 3 palettes that are in my Project 100 uses. I have not been reaching for these enough organically to reach 100 uses, so trying to hit pan on a shade will definitely help. I have my ABH Sultry palette, my ColourPop Dream Street palette, as well as my Urban Decay Wild West palette, which this is a bit of a wild card. I have 3 kind of selections for really old eyeshadows. So my 2 oldest palettes, I bought these at the same time. I've talked about them a lot on my channel, are these 2 Wet n Wild palettes, and my Walking on Eggshells quad, I only need 1 more pan, so then this will be ineligible for this project. And these are also very easy to hit pan on. So hopefully I can get some movement up my stats and feel good about that. And then lastly, for the oldest, my Makeup Geek singles, these 9 are technically the oldest. I bought these ones a couple years later than that. I only have 1 pan, but these will also be eligible. And then I have 2 other that kind of go hand in hand with the Sultry. Everyone says that ABH palettes are very easy to hit pan on. I have no pans showing in Sultry. I have a lot of pans in my Modern Renaissance, and while I'm trying to finish a shade in Deck of Panning, I'm still going to allow it to be rolled into this project to get even more progress on it. And I have 1 pan in my ABH Jackie palette, and this is not that easy to hit pan on. It's not that loose, fluffy formula like the Modern Renaissance, but I still want to include this as one of my focus. So I have all my ABH palettes in here too. Really quickly, I'm going to run through stats like lightning, speed, and then we'll get into rolling eyeshadow. Sorry this is taking so long for the introduction. My current eyeshadow stats. I have 99 eyeshadow palettes in my collection. I have 29 eyeshadows with pan on them. I have a total of 1,427 pans of eyeshadow, which means my pan percentage is at 2.03%. And as I mentioned earlier, I've only hit 4 pans so far this year. That's it. That's enough rambling. Let us randomly generate the 2 eyeshadows from my entire collection. We are going to do a screen record. As you can see, I have in 1 to 1,427, and we will randomly generate. We get 896. Which comes from my ColourPop Smoke and Roses palette. Second shade is 482. which comes from my ColourPop Wild Nothing palette. We now need to do Laney's prompts. There are 100 of those. So prompt number 1, we have number 83, which is a shadow from a palette with no pans. And the second prompt is 89, which is an orange shimmer shadow, which I actually, let me have a quick look. We might need to re-roll for that one. We will have to re-roll. I have no orange shimmer shades in my focus palettes. We now get 96, a shadow you want to pan. I am so excited. Let me go make my selections and I'll be right back. I am back with my eyeshadows and I'm so excited to see what my 2 randomized roll-ins are. I did not peek, but we have 2 ColourPop palettes, which makes me a little bit nervous because they're very hard for me to hit pan on. So the first number we rolled came from my Smoke and Roses palette, and it is the shade Whisper, which is one of the last shades. It's the 3rd last shade. So let's look and find out what it is together. Oh, okay, this is a very, very deep brown. It might be too dark for my eyebrows, but I will certainly test it out as a brow shade. It feels very like light and powdery, which could be to my advantage. It might be a good brow shade, I'm not sure. But that is shade number 1, a cool toned deep brown. This might be a 24 use shade. Shade number 2 comes from my ColourPop Wild Nothing palette, which is one of my favorites for very light everyday looks. And the shade that got randomly selected was Spirited, which I would guess that I had in a panning project before because there's a huge dip in there. Do you see that? But I don't think that there is any pan. And if I have to look that hard, then I'm going to go with no. But that is quite the dip, which makes me very excited because that means I will be able to hit pan in that without much trouble at all. This is one of those more creamy shadows, but it is more of a toppery shade. It has a very sheer base, but a lot of dimensional, like gold shimmer in it. It is absolutely stunning. I like that shade a lot, and because it has that transparent base to it, it makes it very versatile, and I can top that on so many neutral shades. That makes me so excited. From Laney's prompts, the first prompt I pulled a shadow from a palette with no pans, and for that I'm choosing my ABH Sultry palette. I cannot believe that this palette does not have any pans from me. This is severely neglected in my collection, and the eyeshadow I am selecting, there goes the brush, to hit pan on is going to be Pearl. I think that that is going to be the easiest for me, and again the most versatile. I also considered Twig, but because we have another cool tone brown, although this one isn't as dark, I think getting some more shimmer in here is going to be the best bet for success for me. And this is very light and will be a perfect inner corner highlight. There is a swatch of that. And the second prompt from Laney's list that I drew in is just a shadow I want to pan. So I opened up all of my focus palettes and really tried to look at the ones that have the biggest dip, the colors that I really like, and ultimately I am going with my Modern Renaissance palette, and I have been low-key trying to hit pan in Vermeer for a few weeks now. It's not in any projects, but there is a massive dip in this shade. This is a pinky toned inner corner highlight, which granted is similar to Pearl, but I think I'm going to hit pan in Vermeer pretty easily, fingers crossed, and then I can focus on Pearl as well. So apologies that this is not the most colorful, fun color story, but my goal with this project ultimately is to hit pans and setting myself up for success. And though I'm a color lover, on an everyday basis, neutrals are the easiest reach, and when you have these bright blues, bright greens, though I love those shades, they're really hard to use again and again and again for a lot of days in a row in order to reach that pan that I so desperately want. And I feel very confident with these eyeshadows. I feel confident that I can hit pan in these 3 shimmer shades without too much trouble. I am a bit concerned with the matte from my Smoke and Roses palette, just because there is no dip, and I know how hard ColourPop mattes are to hit pan on, but I have my fingers crossed that I can get use out of that in my brows, at least in the tail end would be wonderful, if not as a liner. And then this might be a 24, that's upside down, this might be a 24 use and then roll out kind of shade, which is fine, but if it's a very good like utilitarian shade in that I can use this every day without much trouble, even if it is just as a liner. I feel so motivated by these eyeshadows. I cannot wait to get going on this project pan. I hope I have some really fantastic progress to share with you guys in the first update, and that we can keep this project moving really well. Let me know your thoughts on me doing Pan Those Eyeshadows Remix Edition. Do you like the changes I've made? I feel pretty happy with them, and I think they make sense for my panning struggles and the goals that I have as well. If you enjoyed this project pan intro, be sure to give this video a thumbs up so that I know, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!